Sean Hannity, everybody refuses to call Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity, nobody calls Sean Hannity. I said the war's a stupid thing, if somebody would call Sean Hannity. I spoke to Sean Hannity, everybody refuses to call Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity, nobody calls Sean Hannity. I said the war's a stupid thing, if somebody would call Sean Hannity. I spoke to Sean Hannity, everybody refuses to call Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity, nobody calls Sean Hannity. I said the war's a stupid thing, if somebody would call Sean Hannity. I spoke to Sean I spoke to Sean Hannity, everybody refuses to call Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity, nobody calls Sean Hannity. I said the war's a stupid thing, if somebody would call Sean Hannity. I spoke to Sean Hannity, everybody refuses to call Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity, nobody calls Sean Hannity. I said the war's a stupid thing, if somebody would call Sean Hannity. I spoke to Sean Hannity, everybody refuses to call Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity, nobody calls Sean Hannity. I said the war's a stupid thing, if somebody would call Sean Hannity. I spoke to Sean I spoke to Sean Hannity, everybody refuses to call Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity, nobody calls Sean Hannity. I said the war's a stupid thing, if somebody would call Sean Hannity. I spoke to Sean Hannity, everybody refuses to call Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity, nobody calls Sean Hannity. I said the war's a stupid thing, if somebody would call Sean Hannity. I spoke to Sean Hannity, everybody refuses to call Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity, nobody calls Sean Hannity. I said the war's a stupid thing, if somebody would call Sean Hannity. I spoke to Sean
Political partisanship can be very healthy in a democracy if it is done within the spirit of patriotism. But it can also threaten the same democracy if members of at least one of the parties have abandoned completely any shape, any form of patriotism. Abraham Lincoln said, "You can fool all the people some of the time, some of the people all the time, but you cannot fool all of the people all of the time." Hello everyone, I am MD, and this is the Fourth Branch program, the first and only program which is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. This afternoon we'll bring you the continuation of what does GOP member stand for, and this is really in relation to what has been going on in the country for the past 18 months or 24 months. It has brought a lot of people to exhaustion, frustration, anger. Everybody keeps hoping that at some point someone within the Republican Party, I heard the expression, will grow some spine and do something. I'm not sure I even share that idea, because I do remember that every single member in the legislative body took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Every member in the legislative branch took an oath to protect the United States of America. Today, however, something very different is happening to the country. Not different in a good way. But before we get to that point, there are two very important questions that I actually need to get to get you to answer, because this program, as I always begin it with the following: it is not for everybody. If you're watching it live, pay close attention, because it may not be for you. And if you happen to stumble on the video, because we do have archive of all the program which are located on the People Branch YouTube channel, the message is for either, whether you're watching this program live or you open the video. The following two questions should determine whether you want to continue watching or you just want to move forward, because do something else, open another video, because this program is definitely not for everybody. Question number one: would you entrust your teenage daughter to a non-rapist? And question number two: would you have a non-pedophile cared for your toddler? If you have difficulty answering either question, this program is not for you. If you answer yes to either or both questions, this program is definitely not for you. You can close this video now and move on to something else. If your answer to both questions is absolutely not, you should stick around. The program will enlighten your mind and will get you engaged in something noble. I will give you 1 minute to decide, and I will come back to continue with the program. If you are still here, I can safely assume that you have some degree of decency. Then you should definitely stick around. This program is catered to those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. We are going to continue with the program we started earlier today, which is the State of the Republic. What does GOP members stand for exactly? But before we go to that length, let's take a look at a couple of very important things that's happening in the news. Currently, we have this gentleman, Chuck Grassley, he is the individual behind the movement to get Brett Kavanaugh, the Supreme Court nominee by the President of the United States, who has been accused by Christine Blasey Ford of having sexually harassed, assaulted her. Now, Chuck Grassley and pretty much every single Republican in the House and in the Senate seem to have already made up their mind that Brett Kavanaugh is going to be confirmed. Now, as of last Friday, not this Friday, 2 Fridays prior, it was all but certain that that was a done deal, and the next Supreme Court justice who would replace Kennedy, who made the announcement of his retirement a few months ago, that was a done deal. However, 2 Fridays ago, a letter that was held in the hands of Dianne Feinstein was a bombshell that rocked the Republican Party. And suddenly, the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh hangs in the balance. Despite all that, that gentleman, Chuck Grassley, is a senator. He is determined that no matter what happened by hooks and by crook, Brett Kavanaugh will be confirmed. Now, without having to go through the detail of the process, usually whenever an individual who is nominated for a public post, especially something as important as the Supreme Court justice, and something weird as being accused of having sexually assaulted someone, then there should be definitely a pause, regardless of the circumstances. There should be a pause to, at the very least, understand the severity or the veracity of the accusation. By all accounts, it looks like Republicans couldn't care less, that even if that's true, then they want to move forward with the process. Now, Christine Blasey Ford, who is the lady you're looking at on the right of your screen, next to is Brett Kavanaugh. And the question that has been swirled around is, who do you believe? Do you believe that Brett Kavanaugh, who has quote unquote categorically denied having done any such thing? Or do you believe Christine Blasey Ford, who has accused him of sexually assaulting her? Now, we're not talking, we didn't bring that up to say, to take one side or the other, but to make a very logical point, because the very purpose of bringing certain piece of news is to shed light on some matters. Because if you tune into Fox or to Breitbart and InfoWars or any of the media which is Republican leaning, you're most likely going to hear that it's just an accusation, there is nothing to it. And if you tune into MSNBC and any media that's most Democrat leaning, you will find that there is a lot of pushback, a lot of trust on the accusation. Now, in here at the Fourth Branch, we try to look at from two aspects. One, facts, if there are facts, and logic. Because there is one thing that rules the world is logic. 2 + 2 are 4, no matter which language you talk, you speak, no matter where you're from, there is nothing that can transcend logic and facts. So, having said that, there are two very important things to keep in mind. Number one, it is very rare that a woman would accuse a man of sexually harassing her or assaulting her if that didn't happen. Now, there are a couple of reasons too. Could be more, but there are a couple of reasons that a woman could accuse a man of sexually harassing or assaulting her, but would not be true. The first one is the person, the man, could have expressed interest in the woman, and initially the woman could have also expressed interest in the man. Something happened, and it didn't go well, and the woman may later on come back and try to punish the man by accusing the man of sexually harassing her. The second one is those two, the man and the woman, could have had a relationship. Maybe that end, or maybe that's rocky, or a relationship that's not going too well. Either the man may have even threatened to leave the relationship, or maybe the man was cheating on his fiancée, his wife, and suddenly he wants to end the relationship. Now the woman can come and accuse the man of sexually harassing or assaulting her, a way to punish and so on. Now, again, as I said, there could be more, but outside of that, there is no ground at all, usually, for any woman to accuse a man of sexually assaulting or harassing her, and for that to be a lie. That's just what is the what the historic trend is. So, and the second aspect of the whole conversation is to figure out what is the motive. What does the woman have to gain to accuse a man who didn't do anything to her of sexually assaulting or harassing her? Keep that in mind when you're making the argument for or against. Now, Chuck Grassley did receive a letter last night, from Christine Blasey attorney, asking for a little bit more time because Mr. Grassley did put a what you call a hard stop 10 p.m. last night, saying that if he did not hear from Christine, then on Monday they will move forward with the vote, with voting for the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh. Interestingly, before the 10 p.m. deadline, the attorney did send a response back to Chuck and asking for more time up to today. And Mr. Grassley did prolong the time for the attorney to 2:30 p.m. today. So I'm certain that some new development must have transpired by 2:30 as to whether Mr. Grassley's office already received a response, a reply to that effect or not. I'm not sure. We will update you on this matter at some other time. Now, the second thing that's making a lot of news is Rod Rosenstein. Now, Rod Rosenstein is the acting Attorney General for the sake of the Mueller's investigation. Now, the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, is still around, but because he was involved in the Russia's affair, then he had to recuse himself. And since then, since the investigation has started, which was May 2017, Mr. Rosenstein has been the one handling that case. In other words, Robert Mueller, who is the special counsel, reports to Rod Rosenstein in matters related to the Russia's investigation. Now, yesterday, the New York Times printed an article in which it accused Mr. Rosenstein of having one recorded conversation that he may have with the President of the United States. And the second aspect of the bombshell is that presumably Mr. Rosenstein has discussed the invocation of the 25th Amendment in order to remove Mr. Trump from the Oval Office. Now, it should be noted that Rod Rosenstein's office has completely denied that there was ever any such discussion of removing Donald Trump from the presidency, or even the idea of recording conversation with the president. The New York Times, of course, stand by the article. They're not budging, and they reaffirm that what they printed, that's exactly what happened. Now, also you should know that a number of other papers did indeed report something related to that matter, except to mention that Rod Rosenstein was joking, sarcastically mentioned that because of a conversation that was going on after a meeting at the White House, and sarcastically mentioned those two items. So it is good to know that, at the very least, that this information was indeed said, but there are two major differences in the reporting of the news. New York Times report, that's what happened, that's the way it happened, but other news media outlet reports that Rod Rosenstein was joking. No matter what the situation is, now what's in the news, or what has been in the news, is the discussion as to whether Mr. Trump is going to move forward to get rid of Rod Rosenstein. Now, it's not necessarily the dismissal of Rod Rosenstein which is really in discussion, but rather as to what would happen to the Mueller's investigation. Because up to this point, Rod Rosenstein is the buffer between the special counsel and the White House. So if Trump indeed goes forward and gets rid of Rod Rosenstein, what would happen to the Mueller's investigation? We will keep you abreast of this new development, but we'll take a short commercial break, and when we return, we will go forward with the already pre-scheduled conversation about what does GOP members stand for exactly. I'll be right back.
I'm telling you, Michael Jordan himself was right here in my McDonald's. I fixed him the very first McJordan special.
Right, Bill.
I did. I took a quarter pound of pure beef, smoked bacon, cheese, and some of my favorite barbecue sauce, and I named it the McJordan special.
Bill, the sandwich, definitely great.
Yeah, but you got the cooling with that story.
But it's true.
How you doing, Bill?
Hi, Michael. Michael.
The McJordan special for a limited time.
The United States of America is in a serious crisis. The biggest problem the crisis that the country is going through now is to have a network that's called itself news, but that says nothing about news. That's only telling lies, create controversies, and at the same time educating millions of people to stay or become ignorant. There is nothing that is said by Sean Hannity, there is nothing that is said at Fox that is true. So when I say the country is in a crisis, this is not an exaggeration. Donald Trump is wrong to call the media the enemy of the country. Adolf Hitler did exactly the same thing in 1933. Journalists are not in the business of fairness. Our business, our only business, is to be objective. It is our duty to hold Trump and every administration accountable. Today, it is urgent, it is necessary, it is critical. Our very freedom depends on it.
Wayfair, you got just what I need. Everything from my home, you got it for me. I never see selection quite like this. Every color and size in my mind. They got every single thing on my list. And with 70% off, who knows what I'll find. Wayfair, you got just what I need. Everything from my home, you got it for me. Wayfair, and the shipping was free. Now my home's the home I want.
From all of us at Wayfair, find what you need today.
I'm telling you, Michael Jordan himself was right here in my McDonald's. I fixed him the very first McJordan special.
Right, Bill.
I did. I took a quarter-pound of pure beef, smoked bacon, cheese, and some of my favorite barbecue sauce, and I named it the McJordan Special.
Bill, the sandwich, definitely great.
Yeah, but you got the cooling with that story.
But it's true.
How you doing, Bill?
Hi, Michael. Michael.
The McJordan Special.
So yes, Donald Trump is not at the root of the problem. The Republican legislators, and worse, the leaders in the Republican Party, not just a few Republicans on the fringe, the leaders. That was Mitch McConnell who took it upon himself to put obstacles, stumbling block, to prevent anything from being done. So yes, the Republican Party has always talked a lot of talk as if they want something good for the country, but in reality, everything that they do is to the detriment of the constituent. Unfortunately, the Republican constituent are very naive, gullible, naive, yes, because they believe everything that they hear those people tell them, and they've been saying that for decades. It's not something that just happened yesterday. They have been doing that. The example I gave you about national debt, during the Clinton administration, they were singing the same tune. They want to bring debt down. They don't want to put debt on our children. It's a song they sing every time that there is a Democrat in the Oval Office. Now, if they were concerned, if indeed that concern was genuine, when they are in power, when they have the lever of the government, then they would have done something towards that end. But instead, they add to the deficit, they add to the national debt. So I'm not sure I see their concern for the country. I'd like to understand how that's explained. How do you explain concern for your country when every time you have the opportunity to do something, you do just the opposite? But for a reason that's beyond logic, Republican constituents continue to believe every time that they hear those people say the same thing over and over and over, as if they're hoping at some point they're going to see the light. Mitch McConnell has been in Washington for 3+ decades, and he has been singing the same song over and over and over. Now, Donald Trump, during the time that Obama was president of the United States, literally was behind the birther movement. He was the ringleader of the birther movement. Now, Donald Trump was a civilian. As it is acceptable in this country, you can say anything you want, you can do anything you want. Not that it was acceptable for someone in the business community to be behaving like a moron, but hey, this is the United States. Anybody is free to be stupid. But what was not acceptable is the fact that for the whole time that the birther movement was ongoing, Republicans, most Republicans, including leaders in the party, they were giggling, they were supportive of that, because all that Donald Trump was doing was to undermine the presidency of Obama. And as far as Republicans were concerned, that was just fine. That was just really what they want. Someone, it's like they saying, you see, this is not us. That's just somebody else doing it. There was no pushback. Donald Trump is not responsible for the situation the country is in today. I'm no friend of Donald Trump. I'm no fan of Donald Trump. But this is one thing that we cannot put on Donald Trump. Sure, he's an ass. Sure, he's a moron. But Donald Trump is not responsible for the current situation in the country. The whole Republican Party has been supportive of those type of situations for decades, which come now to take the country down the path we in today. Because things go from bad to worse, not the other way around. A child who is not corrected at the very onset, when that child starts to throw a tantrum, that child will become later a nuisance for society. At the time Donald Trump was undermining the presidency of Obama, Republicans in general either stay silent or quietly supported it, and some even went publicly to support Donald Trump. A few Republicans went on Fox to say, if he has nothing to hide, why don't he show his birth certificate? That's just another form of supporting what Donald Trump was doing. Never before in the history of the United States that anybody, until Obama, was being asked to produce a birth certificate. Never before. Republican leaders did not push back. Those who pretend to push back gave some kind of lukewarm pushback to the whole idea. So what we witnessing today in the country is the product of the Republican Party. This is not an accident. This is not some cosmic cataclysm. This is something that has been in the making by the Republican Party. The Republican legislators have been doing it in Washington through policies, through debates, and those messages, their messages, amplified by networks such as Fox, Rush Limbaugh, Breitbart, InfoWars, and so on. So Donald Trump has simply followed the trend. A child who is not corrected for throwing a tantrum will become a nuisance for society. Donald Trump was that child, and the Republican Party welcomed him with open arms because he was doing the Republicans Party bidding. Because at the time he was calling the Obama presidency illegitimate, Republican Party was on board. The first State of the Union address by Obama, the very first one, a member of the Republican Party, during the delivery, in the back of the room, shouted, "You lied." This is the first time in the history of the Republic that something like that had happened. A disrespect towards the president, disrespect towards the presidency. A few Republicans, especially John McCain, was very quick to condemn what that lawmaker did in the room. But the majority of the Republican was silent. So those type of behavior in the Republican Party have been gradually becoming worse and worse, and during the Obama administration had got to a point where what you would call a point of no return, where fringe elements everywhere, whether it's civilian, whether it's member of the party, whether you call it extremist in the party, network, they all becoming worse and worse, and there was no pushback whatsoever from the Republican Party. So it's not an accident that we have Donald Trump today as the President of the United States. No, it's not because people were angry, or maybe they were, but that anger didn't come yesterday. It is an anger that probably unjustified, but nevertheless manufactured anger that the Republican Party, mostly Republican leaders, have been coaching their constituents to behave that way, to the point where we are today in the United States of America. Donald Trump is not a kid, obviously, although he's compared to a baby because of his way of his reactive frequencies into everything that's said or done to him. But Donald Trump did not create the situation the country is in today. This is not Donald Trump's making. Leaders in the Republican Party are very much responsible for the problem. We have an interesting example that happened not too long ago, maybe a few weeks ago, when a member, a chairman of the person responsible, I'm not sure of his title, or at least it escaped me, the gentleman who was indicted on insider trading. His name escaped me, but nevertheless, he's a congressman. He was indicted, but he did have a position, a chair position within the Republican Party. Now, within hours of learning that, Paul Ryan automatically stripped him of his chairmanship. Now contrast that to Devin Nunes, who has been working in collaboration with the White House trying to derail the Mueller investigation. It's not something that Paul Ryan doesn't know. It's something that's been debating over and over. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, an audio tape emerged that clearly showed that Devin Nunes has been plotting to derail the investigation to get Rosenstein to be fired so that that investigation can end. And so far, there has been no word from Paul Ryan. Now, again, as I said, it's easy to just take everything and put it on Donald Trump. After all, he's the president of the United States. We expect more, better. We expect more decency. We expect more professionalism. We expect a high standard from our president. We expect a high level of morality from our president, none of which we have on Donald Trump, in Donald Trump rather. But despite that, we cannot put what is currently going on in the United States of America, in the country, we cannot put that on Donald Trump. Yes, as I mentioned over and over, he has exacerbated the problem. He has exacerbated the situation. There is no doubt about that. But the problem that the country is confronting today has been in the making by leaders of the Republican parties. Because it's not enough to just say you are for. You have to live by what you are for. If you are against smoking, then you cannot be caught smoking. If you think smoking is bad, then you cannot condone it when a member of your family smokes. It's either bad or not bad? So if it is unacceptable to have a candidate for president being unreliable, handling classified information, and today you have the president of the United States doing worse than that, and then you're okay with that, then you cannot come and say you are against that. I remember very clearly during the general election how many people in the Republican Party, leaders in the Republican Party, coming out to say that they against Hillary Clinton receiving briefing. Paul Ryan didn't just give an interview. He went as far as sending a letter to the IG to ask that Hillary Clinton was not provided classified briefing. So if he were to be that concerned, if indeed his concern was genuine, what do you think it would have been done today? It would have done today. What do you think his behavior would have been today? Let's think for a moment. Donald Trump had invited Russians, 4 of them, cameraman, a translator, a Russian ambassador, into the Oval Office with no American involved, not even one of his national security advisor. You talking about putting the national security of the country in danger? Then nothing from the Republican. Now, if their concern were to be that genuine, then we would have, all hell would have broke loose. But not a single peep. August 16, 2018, Donald Trump went to Helsinki, Finland for a summit with Vladimir Putin. They had 2 hours alone without national security advisor present. Not a single peep from the Republican. Now, if they were to be that concerned about national security, all hell would break loose. So we know the situation we are in today in the United States of America, the current situation, whether it is with Donald Trump or with any other aspect of the state of affairs in the United States of America, we can put it at the front doors of the Republican legislatures, but more specifically the leaders of the Republican Party. Because every step of the way they prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they have no concern for the country. They talk only just because it's beneficial for them to tell their constituent that they do not accept such and such. But when it comes to show concern, to prove they are truly concerned about the country, they go the other way. They always concerned about deficit and national debt whenever there is a Democrat in the White House. As soon as the Democrat leaves, that concern is no longer there, because it's the time for them to spend some more, to put more debt into, to add more debt to the national debt. Translation: Republican couldn't care less about national debt. They care about national security when a Democrat is in focus, such as when Hillary Clinton was running for president, then she could not be trusted with classified information. We have a president that's under investigation, and by any analysis of any logical individual, Donald Trump is compromised. Has been compromised. Now, instead of the Republican legislators do what they were elected to do in Washington, they go out of their way to defend the president. This is not politics. There is a time to play politics, and there is a time to defend the country. And thus far, no matter which topic we take any topic you want. Republican talks a lot of gibberish, because when it's time for them to prove that they are indeed concerned about whatever that topic is, they show a whole different facade, a whole different aspect of it. And they always have justification for it. They were always against national debt increasing until they add some more to it. And we have proof the past two Republican administrations, that's exactly what happened. Bill Clinton left the Oval Office, left the country with a surplus. George Bush walked in. Within a matter of 1 year, the surplus just disappeared, vanished. But that's not all. They add to the national debt. When Obama took the Oval Office, the country was on the ground, running on the ground. Financial situation was at its worst. There was a 10+ percent unemployment. Bankruptcies left and right. Despite that, Republicans were drumming, beating the drum that we have to rein in on the deficit. We have to keep our national debt down. From an economic perspective, when you have inflation, when you have a recession, it is the time for government to borrow money and spend in order to jumpstart the economy. That was, at that time, that's what the Obama administration had to do. But Republicans were beating the drum that we have to rein in on the deficit. Obama left office. Trump took over a booming economy. Things were going great, going in the upward. The first thing the Republican-led Congress and Senate did is add $1.5 trillion to the debt, to the national debt. So we know there is no ambiguity. There is no gray area. We know that Republicans do not care in iota about any of the policies that they say that they care about, because they prove over and over that when they have the opportunity to do something, they do just the opposite. So we know beyond a reasonable doubt that Republicans don't care. The Republican legislators, the Republican leaders, they just do not care. So we know, and we said that maybe 10,000 times today, we know Donald Trump is not responsible for the situation that the country is going through now. The Republican Party, the Republican legislators, the Republican leaders are fully responsible to have put the country in the predicament we're in today. Donald Trump has no doubt exacerbated the problem, but we cannot blame him for the problem. So what's the solution? What is the solution? George Washington made it a point not to belong to a political party. In case you don't know who George Washington is, one of the framers of the Constitution, also the first president of the United States. George Washington made it a point not to belong to any political party. You could have said that he was the first independent president in the country. So he was the first of a lot of things. First president, first independent. Because it seems that despite having spent a great deal of time crafting a constitution which in all fairness, for the time that it was crafted, is a great piece of document to protect the freedom the United States has acquired from England. That's a great piece of document. It had, the framers really thought through a lot of scenarios of that. If you think about it clearly, at the time that they came up with most of the articles and clauses in the Constitution, it was not really easy to even foresee those scenarios. And yet, they thought about it and they came up with a way to safeguard the freedom that they have acquired from England. Now, how did they do that? First, they structure the running of the government into three branches. As good as the Constitution was, it has a flaw. Well, I'm sure it has more than a flaw, but the particular one that I'm referring to, which represent probably the greatest flaw that maybe they didn't foresee, is that a political party would side with a political, if a political party becomes the leading party in the houses, or maybe they never anticipate or they never foresee that both houses could be occupied by a single political party. Maybe they never imagined that would happen. They did put a lot of faith on the constituent for good reason, because at the time, not only people were very involved in the affairs of the government, they were very concerned. They paid attention, but they were also smart. Don't go anywhere. Republican constituents are still in the dark. Most Republicans, especially those who still support Donald Trump, lives very largely in the dark despite the wide availability of the internet. I'll be right back.
I'm telling you, Michael Jordan himself was right here in my McDonald's. I fixed him the very first McJordan special.
Right, Bill.
I did. I took a quarter-pound of pure beef, smoked bacon, cheese, and some of my favorite barbecue sauce, and I named it the McJordan Special.
Bill, the sandwich, definitely great.
Yeah, but you got the cooling with that story.
But it's true.
How you doing, Bill?
Hi, Michael. Michael.
The McJordan.
Republican constituents still live in the dark. Most Republicans, especially those who still support Donald Trump, live very largely in the dark despite the wide availability of the internet. The cause of the problem is not a lack of information, but rather an inclination to seek for sources of information which support their preset views, however false and misleading. As such, Trumpublicans are more inclined to reject any information which does not support their views, does not please them, or is critical of Donald Trump. They do not have to look far. Fox propaganda network, which is known and referred to by most as Fox News, is the major source of misinformation, disinformation, distorted information, wrong information, and even outright lies. Other sources such as Rush Limbaugh, Breitbart, InfoWars, all have contributed to nurture and preserve the dummification of the Republican Party. The problem is, however, exacerbated by GOP legislators who push false narrative in order to consolidate their base, although usually to the detriment of the country. Such posture on the part of the Republican leaders and the GOP propaganda network represent the main conduit to taking the country down the wrong path. Who in the Republican Party will muster enough courage, now that John McCain is gone, to shine the light for the Republican constituent? As of this moment, most in the Republican Party still live in the dark.
I'm telling you, Michael Jordan himself was right here in my McDonald's. I fixed him the very first McJordan special.
Right, Bill.
I did. I took a quarter-pound of pure beef, smoked bacon, cheese, and some of my favorite barbecue sauce, and I named it the McJordan Special.
Bill, the sandwich, definitely great.
Yeah, but you got the cooling with that story.
But it's true.
How you doing, Bill?
Hi, Michael. Michael.
The McJordan Special.
In 1996, a small network by the name of Fox News was launched with just 17 million viewers. Today, with over 100 million people watching regularly, Fox has become the greatest threat to our democracy. Constantly bombarding the airwaves with false information, distortion of facts, and outright lies, presenting to its audience as news, Fox has created an army of blissful ignorance. According to a recent survey, 82% of Fox viewers are ignorant of facts and the truth. To keep millions of people in ignorance not only prevents democracy from flourishing, but it also clears the path to authoritarianism, to dictatorship. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Let me finish by saying that democracy cannot survive in an environment where truth and facts do not matter. At Fox, truth and facts do not matter. Indeed, democracy in America is in jeopardy. It is a crisis the country can no longer ignore. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a great afternoon and hope to see you again next time when we will continue the discussion on what does the GOP stand for? What does the GOP stand for? What do their members stand for exactly? Good night.